What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's some early thoughts ahead of Game Week 23. So I'm going to talk about some key players like Bruno Fernandes, Foden and Saka, go through some notes from the weekend and give you my early thoughts on my own team as well. So let's get into it. So let's start with my favourite talking point, Bruno Fernandes. And I think this one is quite simple. From Game Week 24, I wouldn't say he's essential, but most FPL managers should be finding a way to get him in their squads. Fulham at home, Spurs at home, West Ham away, Everton away, Palace at home is a pretty good fixture run. You know he's going to start every game. He's now playing number 10. He's on penalties. Man United have no other cup competitions or European matches to play for, so it's pretty much a week between games. He's just an... Oh, I almost said essential there. I meant to say he's a really, really great pick from 24. You should probably have him. Do you need to rush in and get him for Game Week 23, Arsenal away? Absolutely not. That is the most difficult fixture Man United will have all season. Yes, they played very, very well against Man City. It was a brilliant performance. It will be a whole different game against Arsenal away. I was actually listening to the Above Average FPL podcast this morning, and they pointed out that Man City backline was Lewis, Kushinov, Elaine, and then Ake left back. That's not the back four they've been using for a large majority of the last couple of months, which has been like O'Reilly, Nunes, Vardiol, and Diaz. So it was quite a big change to the Man City backline. And we've got to give credit to Man United. They were brilliant. Arsenal away, Timber, White, Gabriel, Saliba, whole different story. Declan Rice in midfield, Zubimendi, etc. So there is no way Bruno is essential to bring in this week. Now, a lot of people are quoting price changes at me. I think team value is important, but I also think it's overrated quite a lot by people. And I always say this, if you are absolutely sure the player you're taking out this week is terrible and you've got to get rid of them, and you know 100% you want to bring in Bruno, which for most people they do, which is fair enough, and you're going to get priced out, then okay, bring him in before Arsenal away. If none of that applies, and you've got a player that's good this week, and you're not going to get priced out, just wait until Game Week 24. Yes, you might have to pay 9.3 million. It's not ideal, but it's not the end of the world if you're not going to get priced out of your moves. So I love Bruno. I've owned him for most of this season when he's been fit. I am not panicking this week unless I've got an injury in midfield that I need to deal with. Game Week 24, yes, 100% I will be there. So one player people are thinking about selling for Bruno Fernandes is Phil Foden, and it's not really a surprise considering that he's blank for 6 game weeks in a row and his price continues to drop. I'm actually in a position now where I paid 8.6 million for him, and that's his current price. So every time he drops, I'm now going to lose a full 0.1 million, which is not ideal, but still in that situation, I don't think I'm going to sell him because Wolves at home is such a good fixture. Now, they have improved recently, and I don't for one second think that they're the worst team in the league. I'd rather play Burnley at home than Wolves at home, but it's still pretty good. We shouldn't change our opinion in an extreme way where we're worried about attackers playing Wolves at home, especially when they play for Man City. Now, you could talk about the minutes, and I'll come on to that in a second, but from a fixture point of view, that's a really good fixture. It's much better than playing Arsenal away. Now, obviously, Foden did come off at half-time against Man United, and that's not ideal, but I don't think that's a sign of things to come. There's rumours going around that he's done something to his hand. Pep has denied that, but we can wait and see. They've got a Champions League game midweek, so we'll see if Foden's in the squad. We'll see what Pep says. We'll see if he starts. There was also apparently rumours going around before the game that he was ill. And if that's true, by the way, and Pep's still chosen to start him, that's pretty good signal that Foden's going to continue to get started moving forward. Let's not forget he started every game since Game Week 4. And for him to not play centrally, Pep basically has to pick 2 of Bernardo, Reinders or Cherki instead. And when Cherki came on against Man United, he was no better in that position. Like, we can say that Foden had a bad game, that is true. Which Man City players had a good game? Not many of them, right? So everything we've seen tells us that Foden's going to continue to start. And unless there is a problem with his hand that's going to stop him from playing football, I think he just starts again against Wolves. And for that reason, I wouldn't sell him. Like, if I was on free hit this week and I thought Foden would start, and I could only pick one of him or Bruno, I would pick Foden. Like, that just seems so obvious. It's Wolves at home versus Arsenal away. From Game Week 24 onwards, 100% Bruno, no questions asked. But this week specifically, it's Foden. Now, usual caveats apply. There will be some people out there that have no other way to get Bruno that they can think of, or because they don't have the transfers, and Foden to Bruno is the only way, and they're about to get priced out. Maybe in that situation, because Bruno is such a good pick from 24, maybe you make the move this week. For everyone else, where you've got a different route to Bruno, or you're not going to get priced out, I would wait. And look, if we get to the Champions League game midweek and Pep says, no, Phil Foden has got a problem, he's going to be out, we don't know when he's going to be back, obviously you sell him. But until we know that, I just don't see a rush to do it. And by the way, that will be my move. I wouldn't do Foden to a midfielder with a good fixture this week, then Bruno. I wouldn't waste the extra transfer. I will go straight from Foden to Bruno, but let's wait and see. Foden's fine for game week 23 if he's going to start. And right now, my prediction would be that he will. But we need to wait and hear for more from Pep. So the player I probably got asked about the most on the stream yesterday was Bukayo Saka. I think with 2 benchings in the last 3 game weeks, people have just had enough and they want to sell him no matter what. And I completely get that frustration. For 10.1 million, a player should not be this much of a headache from an FPL point of view. They should just start pretty much every game and hopefully get you lots of points as well. And Saka's not really doing that right now. So I do get the frustration. My opinion, and this is just a game of opinions, I know most of you don't agree. My opinion is there's a bit of an overreaction right now to Saka, and he's probably okay for most people to keep in game week 23. And I'll explain why. And this is probably going to turn into a bit of a long ramble, but I think there is reason to keep him this week. Now, a lot of the counter arguments people put to me is like, Declan Rice has scored more points for less money. That's a fact. I cannot dispute that. Rice has scored more points for less money, and he is more assured of minutes. And if you want to sell Saka to Rice, I don't hate it. If you need the money for something big, make that move. If you don't need the money, then I would argue Saka's just as good, if not a bit better than Rice this week specifically. I think any game where Saka and Rice get similar minutes, I would still rather have Saka. If we're not taking into account the money side of it, I'd rather have Saka. If you think the minutes are going to be similar, which I think they will be for Man United, I can't guarantee that. You can absolutely counter that argument by saying you cannot guarantee Saka's minutes anymore. True, but I think they'll be okay for Man United. And I'll explain in a minute. The other thing is, the other argument people keep putting up is that Saka's not value for money for 10.1 million. Again, completely agree. He's not. But unless you're desperate for the money, I don't see a need to sell him this week if you think he will start. And by the way, I've said this a lot of times before, not every player in your team has to be value for money. Like, is Erling Haaland value for money right now? 100% not. But no one is thinking of selling him. Now, I know there's different factors at play there, right? Haaland's been super consistent for most of this season. He's also a huge captaincy opportunity most weeks. Saka's not that. But the point is that not every player has to be value for money. So why do I not think we should be selling him this week? And before I start, but I've got to say this, before I start talking about Arsenal fixtures, I've done this about Saka the last couple of weeks and got it completely wrong. So I may well be wrong again here, but he starts in the Carabao Cup midweek. I think he's definitely going to start against Forest. He doesn't. Now, if we take Arteta at his word, the reason that he was benched is because he's played a lot of minutes and he had a bit of a niggle going into the game. So he had a small knock, which meant that he played Madueke instead. Do we believe that? I'm just going to take Arteta at his word. So we have reason to believe that he didn't start Forest because there was a very small problem there and he's played a lot of minutes. Okay? Maybe, maybe not. Either way, I think he's going to start Inter now. It seems very unlikely that he's going to play the Carabao Cup and and not start against Forest and then not start Champions League. So if you're a Saka owner and you really wanted to miss that Inter game, it's not going to happen. I'm pretty sure he's going to start. So then we have to reassess it afterwards. If he only plays 60 minutes, I think that's a pretty good signal that he's going to start against Man United as well. I'll be honest, right now, I'm so confident in the start against Man United that even if he plays 90 against Inter, I'm not sure I will definitely sell him. Because, I don't know, I don't think Arsenal can take any risks in a game like that. Especially with how well Man United played against City. Like, surely you want to play your strongest squad. And if Saka is fully fit, which again, we'll get an indication of in the Champions League, you start him ahead of Madueke, right? Like, Madueke is a very capable backup and a good player, but he's not Saka. So I think Saka starts against Man United. Now, the counter argument to that will be, even if he starts, he gets subbed early now. Like, I saw people on the stream yesterday saying he gets subbed around 60 minutes. That's a bit of an exaggeration. If we look at his Average minutes per start so far this season, it's 83. Now, we have to put context around that. A lot of the 90-minute games he had that bring up that average were when Madueke was injured. So obviously he's going to play more. But even recently in the games he's played, like Liverpool at home, 77 minutes, and Villa at home, 82. Now, don't get me wrong, right? If he's only going to play 77 minutes against Man United, it is frustrating when he plays when he costs 10.1, but he might just go 80 plus. He might just play the full game, depending on how the match is going. So I personally believe he's going to start against Man United, and if I'm right about that, and I might be wrong, but if I am right, then I think he's a pretty good pick. Like, again, it's like the Foden situation. If I was free hitting, I had one choice this week between Saka, who's going to start, or Bruno Fernandes, I'd pick Saka. Like, the overreaction to Bruno is, in my opinion, a little bit crazy considering it's Arsenal away. It's such a tough... Can Bruno score in that game? Of course he can. But he's going to find it a lot more difficult than most of the matches he plays in. So I think Saka's going to start against Man United. I would then hope, and again, we reassess, that he gets benched in the final Champions League game. Because although Arsenal might want to finish top, they can win that last game no matter who they put out. And if that's the case, he then starts against Leeds. And look, some people have said to me, if you've got to think this much about the minutes, for 10 million... you just get rid. You just got to sell him no matter what. I don't really work like that, to be honest. Like, okay, it's annoying to have to think this much about it, but if he plays, the rewards are there, right? Man United at home, not a terrible fixture, although maybe more difficult under Carrick now. Leeds away, also okay. And then I reassess after that. It's Carabao Cup second leg. If he doesn't start that game and he's going to start against Sunderland, I keep him. So... the main thing I would say is, I think he's going to start 23. I think he's a pretty good pick. If you're going to sell Saka to Rice or Fernandes or whoever it is, I think it can wait until 24. And you can sell him any week. Right? That's the thing, right? I think sometimes, like, you look at it, if I keep him this week, I've got to keep him for all. You don't. If you get to game week 24 and you've got these same frustrations, or you don't think he's going to start, you can just sell him. Or if you think he's going to play, you can keep him, then reassess ahead of 25. You can sell him in any week. Obviously, there's potential for Arsenal to have a double in 26. And again, the same conversation will come up. How can you guarantee he'll start both games? I can't. Maybe you reassess it at the time. Maybe you go to triple defence. Maybe you sell him to Rice before the double to get the guaranteed minutes. But it doesn't have to be this week, I guess is my main point. So... by all means, if you need the money, you really want Rice, you really want Bruno for Arsenal away, sell him this week. But I would much rather play him against Man United and just roll. And look, if I'm sat in next week saying, oh, look, he got benched against Man United, but he should forget about it, right? If he doesn't start against Man United, I promise you I will give up trying to justify him as a pick. I might keep him still, but I'll give up trying to justify it. I think he plays 23, and therefore I think he's not a bad pick. So let's go back to Man United for a second. Patrick Dorgu went up in price last night to 4.3 million. And the question that everyone wants to know the answer to, will he continue playing left wing for Man United like he did against Man City? I would have to say probably not, would be my gut feeling about it. Like, there was quite a lot of chat before Carrick's first game that this is something that could happen. He might use someone like Dorgu at left wing, or he might start him left back and use him as a runner that gets forward a lot. In the end, it was the left wing option that he went for. But the idea that he's now going to forever start in that position, I'm just not convinced that's the case. Like, you have to realise that on the bench for Man United against City was Mason Mount, Šeško, and Cunha, and they can all have an effect on other players' minutes, even if they don't directly play in the same position. So like Cunha, for example, could just play on the left. Now, if that happens, maybe Dorgu gets used at left back. He's given lots of license to go forward. Cunha comes into more central positions. That could happen, but that means Luke Shaw has to be benched. And as good as Dorgu was against Man City, and he was brilliant, left back, Shaw is a better option, depending on the role that Carrick wants him to play. Like Luke, whatever you think about Luke Shaw, whether he should have been ousted as the Man United left back at this point, he is just a pretty good left back. So I don't see Dorgu playing that position. So you've got competition from like Cunha. We also don't, and look, we're guessing after one game, by the way. There's not much data to go on here. Mbeumo played number 9. Will that just be what happens the next few games? Possibly. I think against Arsenal, by the way, it will probably be the same team. The bigger problem is, will it be the same team from game week 24 onwards? And if Mbeumo doesn't play number 9, how does that then affect the rest of the team? Does Šeško come in and play number 9 and Mbeumo move to the right? And if that happens, what goes on with Amad Diallo? Does he get benched, or does he get given an opportunity to try and play from the left? Or does Mbeumo go and play from the left? Now, that's not his natural position. He's much better off the right or playing centrally. But these are all things we don't know. Right now, it looks great. 4.3 million player, listed as a defender, playing left wing. Probably will start against Arsenal in that position. And I know some people will want to start him if they own him. That's fine. But to bring him in, it just feels like a bit of a rush. The problem you've got is there's, like, and this is kind of a good thing about Man United picks, but also maybe in this case a slightly bad thing. They don't have any other competitions to play in. So that's a good thing in terms of fitness and minutes, but it's not good for getting an idea of how Carrick wants to set up. Like if Man United had a midweek European game this week, you would see whether Dorgu plays again. You don't have that now. So you're going to base it off two difficult games against City then Arsenal. It might switch against Fulham. I think the feeling in the back of my mind is I just don't see a world where Cunha, Šeško and Mount are just permanently benched, basically. And Cunha can play off the left. He's not a natural left winger. He's not going to do the same role that Dorgu did against City, but you might not need your left winger to do that role in easier fixtures. So if you've got Dorgu, unless there's a really good reason to sell him, I would keep and just see what happens. That's a nice position to be in, but I would not be rushing in to buy this week because I don't think his place is fully secure. And also it's Arsenal away anyway. Now again, if you've got him, left winger, defender, you probably might want to start him. I get that. But to bring him in, I probably wouldn't go there. I'm a little bit cautious when it comes to minutes, as I'm sure you'll know by now if you've watched the videos for a while. So I would almost want to see the Fulham game and then decide from 25 onwards. Like, the thing as well with Dorgu, of course, you always want to get players as cheap as possible and then watch their value go up. Let's say I wait until game week 25 and Dorgu's 4.6 million. And he's just started left wing again against Fulham. Do I care about paying 4.6 million for a left winger that's listed as a defender? Absolutely not. So I would not be in a rush. But the honest answer is, and this is the same for anyone, like they shouldn't pretend otherwise. No one can tell you if he's going to continue to start left wing. We do not have anywhere near enough data to go on. My gut feeling will be that he won't. But let's see. So just a few other notes from the weekend. Some of this stuff I will talk about in other videos this week. For Newcastle, it was another early sub for Anthony Gordon. That is a guy that I just would not buy right now, 100%. If you own him, there is maybe reason just to give him the Villa game. But after that, he's probably got to go. It's a bit of an annoying situation because on paper, he should be a really good pick. Like a fairly cheap midfielder that's number 1 for penalties in a good team. But the minutes are just not there. So I think maybe you could give him one more game, but we'll talk about that a bit more tomorrow. Voltemada started and Vissa was benched. I would just ignore both of them. I suspect that if they can both stay fit, Vissa will get more minutes moving forward for Newcastle overall. But they've got so many fixtures in general, like Champions League, second leg Carabao Cup, etc. Just ignore both. For Sunderland, Bobby now 2 goals in 3 game weeks, only 5.5 million. Maybe you go there if you need a really cheap forward. I would just be a little bit cautious. I think my main concern will be, you remember at the start of the season, Maenda started, and then Isidore came in, then he was the one that everyone wanted to go for, then he started losing his place. I just worry a little bit about Sunderland forwards that if there's a few games where it's not quite going right, will they just change again? Now, the next 2 fixtures, I think, are West Ham and Burnley, so I get that pump, but unless you're desperate for a cheap forward the next 2 games, I'd probably just concentrate your transfers elsewhere. Cole Palmer played the full 90 minutes. The talk after the game from Chelsea fans is that it was absolutely awful outside of scoring a penalty. And there is that. It's actually quite sad, to be honest, because I think we never want players to have injuries. We also want to see the best players playing. And Palmer, at his best, is one of the best players in the league. But there was that clip of him at the end of the game where he's just sat down, he's got the strapping on his groin. He never looked happy throughout that match. You just wonder how much pain he's playing through. How many matches can he get through continuing to play 90 minutes? I think for Palmer, I would just put it off until 24 at the earliest. Like, is it the worst time to play Palace away? No. But unless you're wildcarding this week and you want to take the punt, just give it a couple more games. See what happens in the Champions League midweek. See what happens against Palace away. And then decide in game week 24 what you're going to do. And if you are unsure, but you want to leave the option open, then do that. Leave the option open in 24 to buy him if you decide you want to take the punt. I just think, look, when you've got a 10 million play, you don't have to captain them, right? I'm not captaining Saka anytime soon. Maybe 25, maybe 26. We'll talk about that closer to the time. But you do want the option. And I just wouldn't have the confidence in Palmer at the moment. Does that change after 2 more matches? Maybe not. Man City, Cherky bench. Does he have to go? Potentially. I think the problem you've got is Semenyo started again, and I don't think he can play in the Champions League for Man City at the moment. I think they can submit a new squad once the knockouts start, once the playoffs are done, and then they can put Semenyo in. But right now he can't play. So he just started against Man United, won't play midweek. He probably plays at the weekend. And then unless Cherky's going to play centrally, that probably relies on Foden as well. Like, if Foden's out, then maybe Cherky and Bernardo Silva, or Cherky and Reinders start. Well, it would be Bernardo Silva. But essentially the only reason to keep hold of Cherky is because of Wolves at home. I think his minutes are really susceptible right now, or suspect. They're both probably terrible words. His minutes aren't very good, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, if you've got a spare transfer, I wouldn't mind. If Foden's fine, I'd be tempted to move Cherky on, even though it's Wolves at home. If not, I kind of get the idea of keeping him for that, but after that, he's got to go. And then O'Reilly, he was benched again. That might depend on news for other defenders. Like, if Nunes is going to come back in and play right back, then maybe O'Reilly plays left back against Wolves. But he's another one you've got massive minutes concerns about now. Ake can play left back, Ain't Nori's back as well. O'Reilly's got to go soon. If you want to risk it for Wolves at home, I get it, because the fixture is good. After that, I'd be looking to sell. So I just want to run through some early thoughts for my team ahead of game week 23. I've got 2 free transfers this week and 2 million in the bank. And it's worth pointing out straight away, I don't have enough money to go from Szoboszlai straight to Bruno Fernandes. If I did, I'd be seriously tempted by that. But it's going to take a second move. And I don't want to make that second move this week. So it's almost certain that my move for next week will be Szoboszlai to Bruno. I just don't yet know how I'm going to fund it. The 2 options I've got at the moment, and we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here because this is kind of game week 24 chat, but Szoboszlai to Bruno means I've got to free up 0.6 million. There's a couple of ways to do that. I could sell a defender like Van Dijk or Lewis Hall, potentially. Maybe even to someone like Konza at Aston Villa as a longer-term pick, or maybe a Sunderland defender and go really cheap. They're 2 options. Or I sell Foden. If I think he's a bad pick from game week 24 onwards, I can sell him. The annoying thing is, because of Bruno going up in price, I can't afford to go in Burmo. That is what I was eyeing up the other day. Like, before game week 22... I was eyeing up going Fernandes and in Burmo for Szoboszlai and Foden. I'm now 0.1 off. Now, if I roll this week, I'll have 3 free transfers next week. So I could do those 2 moves and just fund it by selling a defender. Or, if I want to save a transfer, I could just go to Morgan Rogers instead. And Villa's fixtures are pretty good, so I'm not completely against doing that. I just don't think either move needs to be made this week. Like, Szoboszlai's pretty rubbish, let's be honest. And I don't even know if he would even take the next penalty if Salah wasn't on the pitch. But either way, Salah's going to be back now. And I think he's going to get good minutes. Not enough to buy him. And we'll have to wait and see whether that actually comes true, the minutes thing. But Szoboszlai's not a good pick anymore. But I think for this week, I can just keep him. And the same with Foden. If Foden's ruled out for game week 24, by the way, I will just do Foden straight to Bruno. And then I'll decide what to do with Szoboszlai next week. Saka, I've already spoken about a lot. I think overall, I really want to roll this week. And I think it's a good week for most people to roll. I know that's boring to hear. I already seen some comments on the stream saying that I'm fixated on rolling, etc. I'm more fixated on getting points. And all that matters is how many points you've got after game week 38. That's all that matters. And I think that's the best move this week for a lot of people, is to roll. Because next week there's fixture swings for Villa, for Man United, for Chelsea. You want to get your transfers right. And also, a lot of people are going to wildcard. So you don't want to mess up if you're not going to use your chip. And so I think this is a pretty good team to roll. Like, there's not really too many issues here, in my opinion. Like, if Saka and Foden start, they're good. I've just bought in Enzo Fernandes and Tavernier. We'll see what Tavernier does against Brighton tonight, but I'm not going to sell him. I've only just brought him in. As long as he's fit, he's a cheap midfielder, hopefully on penalties, with good fixtures from 24 onwards. Szoboszlai will go to Bruno next week. I just don't know how to fund it. Haaland captain against Wolves is super obvious. Thiago is good against Forest. Then my backline is all home games. Anderson against Brighton, Gabriel against Man United, Lewis Hall against Aston Villa. And then Raya against Man United at home. And actually, when I look at the fixtures this week, I'm not sure which other defenders I would even want. Like maybe a Man City one if I knew who was going to start against Wolves. I don't think Sunderland are terrible, but it is an away game against West Ham. It's not even at home. I've got double Arsenal defence with Gabriel and Raya. Like Chalobah is fine, but it's Palace away. It's not at home. The good fixtures for Chelsea are next week onwards. I mean, Tarkowski's pretty good against Leeds at home, but you get the point, right? There's not many defenders I feel like I'm missing, and that's why I'm not going to sell Van Dijk. I think probably by now, if you've watched the videos for a while, you will learn that I very, very rarely see players as absolute must sell. Like that's how people see Van Dijk right now. But if I'm benching him this week, why is he a must sell? That just doesn't make any sense. Now I may well end up starting him instead of Anderson, but I kind of like the idea of, because I've got Tavernier, bench the defender he's playing against, because Anderson's not that bad against Brighton at home anyway. So I think for me, I am more than happy to just play it by ear week to week. I understand that Van Dijk is not providing value for his cost. Same with Saka. But until I see them as big problems, they can just stay. Like, who would I even sell Saka to this week? Honestly, Declan Rice, fine. But what would I use the money for? Okay, I could do Szoboszlai to Fernandes. Like, that's not terrible. But then what about Foden next week? And if Saka's going to start against Leeds, I'd rather deal with Szoboszlai and Foden to get Rodgers and Fernandes rather than get rid of Saka. So I don't hate that suggestion. I'm sure people will quite like it, right? Saka and Szoboszlai to Rice and Bruno. It's not terrible, but do I really need to use 2 free transfers before people are wildcarding next week to get Bruno before Arsenal away? I just don't think I do. And also, another reason I really want to roll is because I have 3 transfers next week, and potentially that leaves the door open to get Palmer if I want him. I don't think I will, for what it's worth, but I don't want to shut that door. So, for example, I could do Saka, Szoboszlai, and Foden to Palmer, Rice, and I think I've got a bit of money spare for this, and Bruno Fernandes. So currently, I've got 0.3 million spare. I know Bruno's going to go up in price, but Palmer's probably not. And even if he does, it's only going to be 0.1. I guess Rice could again. But I've got 0.3 million leeway. If I want to, I can go early next week. So that is something I'm considering. I mean, I quite like that. If I was on wildcard, honestly, how far off a wildcard team is that for 24? Genuinely. I think people will go for Enzo. People will go for Bruno. People will want Rice. Tavernier is just a cheap midfielder. You can't have lots of expensive players. And then maybe Palmer. That ain't far off. Obviously, people will go Chalobah, but I've mentioned last week, I think my defence is quite decent for the next few weeks. It rotates quite well if I only need to play 3 of them. Okay, maybe you'd have Watkins instead of Thiago, but then you've got to find 2 million from somewhere. Maybe that's Van Dijk to Ronaldo, whatever. The point is, I'm not that far off a wildcard team. I know that this wouldn't be the exact one, but you get the point. I'm not far enough off to use a chip. So I think I'm in a pretty good position. That's why I'm so intent on rolling, because next week I've got options, and I think I can get close to the wildcard team without using the chip, and then I can save it for the blanks and doubles. So I am almost certainly going to roll. If Foden's an issue, he'll go to Bruno, which I don't mind doing because that's a move next week anyway. Everyone else is kind of okay. Lewis Hall against Villa. Is there a great chance of a clean sheet? Maybe not, but he's pretty attacking. And like I said, there's not a huge amount of other defenders I want. So, good position, in my opinion. That might all change. There's midweek games. I might get a load of injuries and stuff. Let's talk about it again in the team selection on Thursday. If you enjoyed that, make sure to give it a like. Hit that subscribe button. I'll catch you tomorrow for transfer tips.